The Theater of the Absurd, a KBAD production.
Meet Jerry and Peter. These two are currently fighting over this bench. It ends with Jerry impaling himself on a knife held by Peter. A death? Over a bench? Well...
The whole point of the theater of the absurd is to emphasize the absurdity of human existence. The term was coined by our friend here, Martin Esslin, in his 1962 book, The Theater of the Absurd.
Indeed, this designation applies to a group of particular plays and their respective playwrights. These plays all share one trait: they display that life has no meaning. The theater of the absurd was at its height in the 1950s and early 1960s, although its first plays appeared in the late 1940s. It is the manifestation of Albert Camus's philosophy.
Yes, in my 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, I said that any attempt to find meaning in human existence will fail. Why? Because there is no meaning to human existence. The absurd aspect of life arises when one compares the human need to rationalize and find meaning in a world that is essentially unreasonable. This is the philosophy of absurdism.
The theater of the absurd reflects existentialism. For example, we see in both the themes that we live in a universe with no meaning. Anxiety, the underlying condition of human existence, according to existentialism, pervades absurd plays.
I might mention that most absurd playwrights refuse existentialism. But how did this style appear? We should ask Derek for a view into its history.
The theater of the absurd is often traced back to the 1920s and 30s. Then, certain avant-garde experiments are thought to have given rise to the theater. However, its roots can be traced back many years before. There were absurd elements in some early Greek dramas. Also, during the Middle Ages, the moral plays can be thought of as the predecessors of the modern theater because they depicted everyman-type characters dealing with allegorical and sometimes existential problems. The catalyst that sparked the creation of the theater of the absurd was World War II. The post-World War II political and social context, mass destruction and nuclear weapons threat, the Holocaust and the Cold War, and the fear of war with Europe put into stark perspective the essential precariousness of human life. The theater of the absurd started in Paris, France. It was Paris-based until the influence and style spread elsewhere. New writers were either influenced by absurdism and deliberately chose to follow the style, or they were labeled as such by critics. Notable and famous plays include Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, Eugene Ionesco's The Bald Soprano, Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party, Edward Albee's The Zoo Story, and many others.
Through the various devices that will be explained later on, absurdist playwrights leave the themes of their plays up to the interpretation of the audience. However, the two most prominent would be the negligible significance of human existence and the impermanence of values. The first of these themes is defined by it being man's natural tendency to attempt to search for the meaning of existence in life and to prove their existence through action. However, from the perspective of the theater of the absurd, the search for such answers will prove to be futile, as existence itself is indecipherable and incomprehensible. By extent, so is mankind in its actions. This theme, as well as the conjoined theme of language being a failure as a means of communication, is greatly emphasized in Samuel Beckett's play, Endgame, in which each character tries to discover such meaning through philosophical discussion, but find that such attempts are meaningless and end instead in further confusion.
Damn the sun. Is it night already then?
No.
Then what is it?
Gray. Gray!
Gray! Gray? Did I hear you say gray?
Light black. From pole to pole.
You exaggerate. Don't stay there. You give me the shivers.
this farce day after day?
Routine. One never knows. Last night, I saw inside my breast. There was a big sore.
Pa, you saw your heart.
No, it was living. Clove!
Yes,
What's happening?
something is taking its course.
Clove!
What is it?
We're not beginning to mean something.
Mean something? You and I mean something? Ha ha ha! That's a good one.
The second theme is characterized by the absurdist perception of values, being the delusions or rationalizations of each individual person. Such delusions are attempts to logically deduce the meaning of existence and escape the inevitable truth of humans being insignificant. Thus, the variation of individual values is explained by this logic, and the values of individuals are prone to change, as each person is their own separate being, and these values are the products of each relative perspective. This theme is accurately embodied in Ionesco's Rhinoceros, as each individual maintains their own belief of the spontaneous transformations that occur around town, resulting in conflict and discord. Interconnected with the theme of individualism is the motive of isolation and alienation. Jerry in the zoo story is a disillusioned and alienated individual in society, seeking answers to his loneliness in existence, manifested in the form of a desperate attempt to communicate with Peter. This idea of alienation being commonplace in society today is prevalent in many absurdist plays. Acting as a catalyst for conveying multiple ideas, Peter running away from him as he slowly dies further stresses this point as a fulcrum of existential philosophy, as in the end Jerry's state has not changed and he is left to die alone.